Oh, hello, I'm in the woodshed today and I'm going to be making a traditional saddler's stitching clam. And this is one of the rather nice old tools for leather stitchers, and it's like a head which has two sides that come in and grips the leather at the top there very nicely for stitching. And it's a bit of a complicated project because I'm going to actually need to make a wooden former, and then I'm going to need to actually do some steaming or some boiling of the wood to bend it across the former, so to get the curves. I could bandsaw out some curves, but I'd rather do it totally traditional, so I'm going to have a go at doing some steam bending or wood boiling. I'm not quite certain which I'll do at the moment, but I'll make the former first of all. So I've made up a curve pattern here, and this is for the former. So I've actually accentuated the curve of the clam. This is just one half of it on the drawing here, and the reason that is that when I do I'll probably be boiling wood, I suspect, when it comes to it, but when I do this, either steaming or the boiling, the wood will spring back a bit, so you'll bend it over the former and then it will spring back very slightly as it dries out. So I'll clamp it, there's always a little bit of sort of give back, so I've compensated for that on my plans. I'm just cutting out my paper pattern at the moment, so I've made the two former blocks, and what I'll do, I'll cut this pattern out and then I'll transfer the pattern onto my blocks, and then I will bandsaw around to get the actual shape that I need. You can see that's like one half of the clam, so I'll draw and bandsaw that around. So what I now have are two formers, and actually if I put them both together, hoping this works, yeah, you get the exaggerated version of the sort of clamp shape that I'm aiming for. So as I say, I've exaggerated it really so that there'll be some spring back. Well, I've got both formers at the moment in the vise, and that's because I've just glued a couple of reinforcing beams on one of the edges, but there's quite a lot of run out just there. So this is how it will work. I'll actually clamp the formers in the vise, I'll put my steamed bit of wood in here and clamp in tight and hope it works. If you saw my film actually on the making of the Sussex chair, I did a very similar approach for bending the back little spindles of the chair. So I actually borrowed from put them in formers a bit like this to do the bending. So I'm hoping the same idea works here. Well, the wood I'm going to use for the stitching clam is quite a nice plank of beech that I recently acquired. We're having a sale actually at Bodger's of trying to raise money for a new cover for ourselves. So we were all selling off things. I sold off some tools and some of my friends sold bits of wood. So I picked up a bit of wood and it goes into our funds to buy a new shelter. You know, I whizzed this through my planer, which I haven't used in ages, and is now covered in dust. So I've just bandsawn down the planks, so I've actually got quite a lot of wood now. I think it's just about thick enough. I want it thin enough to bend easily, but thick enough to sort of hold its shape. So we'll see how it goes. This is the foot of the clam, so the bit that rests on the floor, and I'm just going to taper its sides down very slightly, just so it looks a bit more elegant, and it also makes it lighter to carry around as well, which is good. In the same way, I'm going to taper off the clam blades so that they actually fit the sort of foot of the clam, so they're coming in, they're tapering down. I'm cutting off more at the bottom, keeping full width at the top end, so they're tapering downward like that. And I've decided to boil the wood planks, so at the moment they're sitting in a water trough and I'm heating them up with my propane heater. So I'll raise this water to the boiling point and then let them boil for 10-20 minutes or so, get them nice and warmed through, and then I'll try a bend. The hammer is there just to weight them down in the trough so that they're underneath the water level. Unfortunately, my trough has sprung a leak, so I may need to top it up, but it's not a bad leak. So we'll see how it goes. Just in case you're wondering, the milk bottle on the end here, it's just to stop having to put so much water in the trough to heat it up. In short, it has the effect of shortening the trough's length. It just makes the whole process a bit quicker. I've got the bending formers ready now, one for each blade of the clam, so they're set up in my bench vices. Now one of my bench vices has a wider opening jaw than the other, so this is the bigger one, and there's plenty of space there to get the wood in and start bending. With this one, it's a slightly smaller vice, and I'm going to need to bend the wood slightly by hand, just get it around that corner. I don't think that'll be a problem. So that's already. Bending wise, I will not have long. I'll have about a minute to do the actual bends once they're out the water. So one does need to move very quickly because the wood will dry quite fast. The beech wood in the trough does actually change colour as it boils, so it's going a slightly darker, pinker colour. And hopefully it will also kill off any woodworms. There was a little bit of woodworm on one of these pieces. It's a bit of tree that one of my friends had milled down, so sometimes the wood that's been stored a while. I'll be interested to see how this goes because I'm actually bending seasoned wood here, so it's not got a good moisture content. As you know, I normally, when I do chairs, I bend wet wood, but with this the wood's been air dried for some years, so I don't know, we'll see how it goes. If it doesn't work, I'll have to go over and find some wet wood somewhere, some green wood. We'll see. It's had half an hour of boiling, which I hope is enough. Get it lined up and get bending quick. Just bending, looking quite encouraging, quite good actually. Yeah. Overall, fairly successful. I'm not certain how my last bit of the bending was going because I had this bit here sticking out. I've just put a saw on it. It was sticking out too much and now I couldn't close this bit up. So, lesson to remember for the next one, don't have the wood projecting beyond there. But otherwise the bend seems to have gone reasonably well. Whether it will keep it now, I'm probably a little bit doubtful because I undid it and did it back up. But never mind, we're ready for the next one. It's our hot piece of wood. Okay, let's try not to get caught out with this one. So quick initial bend to get it in former, that's okay, and let's wind in. Yep, quickly does it. What will go wrong with this one? Shouldn't be so negative. It's a tight bend, that top bend is very tight. It's just doing it. There's a lot of pressure on this vise. Right, okay, that has bent. That's number 2 done. Not bad. I'm slightly, in my rush, out of alignment. I don't think that will matter, because the plane will still be the same sort of thing. Well, we'll see. I've just been taking the clam blades out of formers, and I must say they're pretty impressive. They've got quite a nice curvature on them. Using a bandsaw, I've just been putting the ends on the clam, so what I'm trying to do with each of them is get a nice flat surface and then just taking it off at the top. So I'll show you what they both look like together. So I've now put the two pieces together and you can see it's beginning to look like a proper saddler's clam. In fact, I've even put a bit of wood down the end here, which is the foot of the clam. So what I'll do now is I'll do some rounding on these edges because you wouldn't want to get caught on these as you're sewing. So I'll round these over and I'll do a bit more fine tuning on the jaws so that they sit nice, and then I'll be ready to fix the stem or the foot. So using a spoke shave, I'm just taking off the sort of raw edges of these, make them, then if you knock it with your hand, it feels nice and smooth, it doesn't give you a nasty sharp jar. So I'm just going down the whole length and just giving this chamfer. So with the foot of the clam it's the same idea. I'm just going to remove the bevels so it's nice and soft to carry, and if your foot knocks it you don't hurt your foot on a sharp edge. With the tip of the jaws, again, I'm just going to very slightly round these over on the outside edge. And it just means your needles, when you're sewing, can glance up. Not a lot more work now to do on the clam. I'm very pleased actually the way it's turned out. It's got a nice head to it. What happens here is when I come to attach these to the foot, they'll actually pull in, and that will give the jaws a nice little bit of gentle pressure for holding pieces of leather. I've just been cleaning up the clam using a little spoke shave and a scraper and a plane to get the jaws sitting right. So I've just put some screws in here. I'm going to give this a glue and a screw. Got some old brass wood screws out of my odds and ends box, which I think will do for this. Seems ages since I've used slotted head screws. So I've just closed the springing this with this vise, and I'm just doing the screws up now. It's slightly obsessive, but I quite like it when I'm using old slotted head screws. I like to line the heads up so they're all facing the same way. I remember as a child travelling in train carriages and looking at the screw heads in all the fittings. They used to have lots and lots of screws in the old train carriages of the 60s, and I used to enjoy seeing if all the screw heads were lined up straight. Some people, when they fitted the components in the carriage, which probably, I don't know, had 200 or 300 screws in it, lined everyone up, and some didn't. And it's a little bit of obsessive nature probably, but I quite enjoy just seeing who bothered to line them up and who didn't. Right, that's a couple of screws in. I'm just checking the head. That's still fine. I am going to have to trim that a tiny bit in a minute. My screws are sticking out, but I say I'm going to saw and file those off. There we are. So that's that one nearly in. Just taking off the tiniest little fragments, not much at all. Right, nearly there. A bit more on that corner. So with the jaws, you want to try and get a little bit of lip there so it doesn't break off. And you can get your needles in quite close as you're sewing. There's a nice bit of spring on these jaws. It's stiff, but it's not, too tight or too loose. Too tight it would mark the leather. Too loose the leather will drop out. That's about right. It's very nice. To finish the clam off, I'm going to use a bit of boiled linseed oil and just apply a gentle coat. It dries fairly quickly. It'll be enough just to give the timber a little bit of finish and a little bit of protection. So I'm just applying it with a rag. Well, here's the finished clam, and I'm really pleased with it. It's got a nice bit of curvature to fit your work in the gap there. The actual teeth seem to the clam jaws are lining up nicely, and there's a nice bit of spring on there. So the idea of these is let's just pretend this scraper is a bit of leather. You open up your jaws, you pop it in, and there you are. You have your leather ready for sewing, and you obviously hold this between your knees. There's enough spring on this, you don't need any additional clamps or anything. So there you are, sit at a chair, do your leather sewing in a clam you've made yourself. That's not bad. I should just add, I will put plans up on my Etsy page for making this. So I'll actually do some plans which will show you the exact measurements of the formers and a few guidance notes and the actual measurements of the clam you're trying to get to. So if you do want to have a go at making one of these, I'll make sure those plans are on my Etsy page and they'll be very reasonably priced. I'll also put some plans for my other clam that I've made, the adjustable one as well, up there on the same set, so you get 2 for 1. Anyway, bye bye, thanks very much.